Well, the general command of the Syrian army claimed he shot down an Israeli fighter jet or a warplane, as well as a drone, either late Monday night or into Tuesday morning, so essentially overnight. I spoke with the Israeli military spokespeople, and they deny that anything ever happened, calling it a completely false report, a complete fabrication, and complete lies. They say, however, that 2 Syrian surface-to-air missiles were fired at their aircraft that were flying in that area, and this is right on the fence, essentially, on the line between the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights and the Syrian Golan Heights. So what were Israeli planes doing in that vicinity to begin with? Well, the IDF says, the Israeli military says that there were projectiles, weaponry, or fire that came over from the Syrian Golan into the Israeli Golan overnight, and Israeli warplanes or fighter jets were responding, were retaliating against the targets, against the military that fired those projectiles, which is the Syrian army, according to the Israeli military. So it's these Israeli warplanes, these fighter jets that were flying in that area, which is the area of Quneitra, right across the fence, essentially very close to the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. The Syrian army says they shot down those aircraft, while the Israeli military denies that claim, saying that although they were fired upon by Syrian surface-to-air missiles, none of their aircraft, which includes fighter jets, warplanes, and drones, were ever in any danger, completely denying the Syrian military reports. Max?
And the Israelis have been targeting that area recently in response to fighting going on in the Golan Heights or around it.
Yes, from what we see, it seems there's an increase of fighting there on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights between what would be the Syrian army, the Syrian military, and between Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, which used to be called al-Nusra. That was a branch of al-Qaeda that operated there. There's been a tremendous amount of fighting there between the Syrian army and the rebels there over the past few months, perhaps even over the past year. That fighting, it seems, has intensified in recent weeks, especially last week. We saw projectiles cross from Syria into Israeli-occupied territory 3 times, as well as once overnight, an indication that there is increased fighting there. Whenever those projectiles cross from the Syrian side into the Israeli-occupied side, the Israelis carry out a response strike, a retaliatory strike, and that's what happened overnight. That is the genesis, essentially, of the Syrian army claim that they shot down the Israeli fighter jet and the Israeli drone, a claim, again, that the Israelis say is completely false.
Jerusalem. CNN. In the most serious clash between Israeli and Syrian forces since the start of Syria's civil war 6 years ago, Israeli aircraft struck several targets in Syria overnight, the Israeli military said Friday. The Syrian military said the strikes targeted a military site near Palmyra, the ancient city, once held by ISIS and retaken by the Syrian government, is seen as strategically important to both the regime and its opponents. In response, Syrian forces fired anti-aircraft missiles at the Israeli jets, saying they downed one aircraft and hit another. Israeli vehemently denied the assertions, calling them absolutely not true. Large circle overnight. IAF conducted strikes against several targets in #Syria. Anti-aircraft missiles launched at the aircraft were intercepted. And mdash. Peter Lerner. At Lerner. March 17, 2017. At no point was the safety of Israeli civilians or the IAF aircraft compromised. A statement from the Israel Defense Forces said, one of the missiles was intercepted by Israel's Aero missile defense system, marking its first operational use. The system is built to intercept ballistic missiles. Read more. The announcement came just more than a year after the first successful Aero 3 intercept test was carried out in December 2015. At that time, Israeli officials would not say when the missile would become operational. Israel has reportedly struck Syria multiple times in the past, often targeting weapons shipments headed for Hezbollah, the anti-Israeli group based in Lebanon. The IDF rarely acknowledges these strikes, however, making Friday's statement unusual. Repeated incursions in November 2012. Israel fired warning shots towards Syria after a mortar shell hit an Israeli military post. The first time Israel had fired on Syria across the Golan Heights since the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Israeli jets have been striking targets in Syria since at least 2013. when U.S. officials told CNN they believed IDF jets had hit targets inside Syrian territory. Just watch as Israel denies.